Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission today, well, it's not just about analyzing sources. We're aiming to fundamentally look under the hood of our own minds.
Yeah, the big one.
We're diving into this challenging idea, maybe even a little bit terrifying, that most of the thoughts you think, the beliefs you hold, even the path you follow, they're not really original.
Mm.
They're actually, recycled, inherited patterns.
Right. And the sources we're looking at treat this less like some abstract philosophy and more like a systemic reality.
Yeah.
It's a picture of conditioning that's so pervasive, we actually confuse compliance with,
Yeah.
like genuine autonomy.
So confusing the map with the territory almost.
Exactly. And the ultimate question we're exploring for you, of the listener, the learner, is how practically to break that cycle.
Yeah.
How do you achieve real self-sovereignty?
And we really have to kick this off with the provocation that kind of launched this whole topic for us. It just cuts right to the heart of it.
Yeah, the Musk quote.
The sources cite Elon Musk asking, "Who wrote the software running in your head? Are you sure you actually want it there?" Bam.
It's the perfect summary, isn't it? Because it starts from this assumption that reality, or at least our perception of it, is programmable.
Okay.
And if we accept the assertion, which these sources definitely do, that most people don't think independently, that their actions, their fears, their goals are just patterns derived from outside forces.
Like parents, schools, media.
Social media, algorithms,
Yeah.
all of it.
Yeah.
Then we kind of have to view ourselves as like machines running on inherited software, maybe even outdated software.
Okay, that sounds a bit bleak, but also
Yeah,
incredibly actionable.
that's the key. It implies you can do something about it.
Right. So our goal in this deep dive is really to extract the knowledge, the tools necessary for you, the listener, to stop being just a passive user of that borrowed software. We want you to become the chief architect, the author, really, of your own mental operating system.
Taking the keyboard back.
Exactly. So that you can consciously choose to live a truly fulfilling life, one that is explicitly yours, not just some sequence of pre-programmed defaults you stumbled into.
So, okay, if we want to rewrite the code, we first need a really clear diagnosis of these conditioning mechanisms, right?
Makes sense. Understand the problem before you try to fix it.
Precisely. The sources introduce this concept they call the social matrix. And they're careful to say it's not like some grand conspiracy.
Right. No shadowy figures pulling strings necessarily.
Not necessarily. It's more like an emergent system. It's where every institution, schools, media, family structures, government, they all kind of support the others. They form this perfectly circular, self-reinforcing belief system.
An echo chamber built around us.
Exactly. And the different influences don't really contradict each other much. They validate each other.
Right.
School reinforces what media says, which might align with what your parents believed, and so on.
Okay, so let's try and attack that circular mechanism layer by layer, starting at the very beginning, right? The foundations. Layers 1 and 2, parental and early childhood conditioning.
Yeah, and this is where the conditioning is maybe the hardest to even see, let alone resist, because it's tied directly to our most fundamental needs. Love, safety, survival.
That makes it powerful.
Incredibly. So parental programming. This is basically parents, often with genuinely good intentions, passing on their own unconscious conditioning.
Like what? What kind of things?
Oh, their financial anxieties, maybe their religious beliefs, their views on relationships, success, failure. It's not usually malicious, it's just automatic. It's their reality, so they install it.
And the core mechanism isn't like sitting down and having a reasoned debate about value.
Oh, definitely not. It's emotional leverage, pure and simple.
How so?
Approval, affection, love, even basic survival needs, food, shelter, they're made contingent, subtly or not so subtly, on conforming to these inherited beliefs.
So if you deviate, you risk rejection, losing that connection.
Exactly. The child learns incredibly quickly. Align with the reality presented to you to maintain safety and love. And the source material points out this kind of tragic irony. The cycle just repeats because no one questions where the values actually came from.
Yeah.
They're just accepted as truth, as the way things are, because they originated from those primary authority figures who kept us alive. You don't bite the hand that feeds you, right?
Wow. Okay. So parents are the primary source code almost. How does layer 2 early conditioning build on that? Does it just reinforce it?
It doubles down, absolutely.
Yeah.
And often through tools we barely even notice, like language itself.
Language. How did language condition us?
Well, think about the subtle power of the words you have. You can only really conceptualize things, structure your thoughts in terms of the language that's available to you.
So if your language lacks words for certain complex emotions or ideas,
Then those ideas become much harder to grasp, to process, maybe even to experience fully. It sort of sets the boundaries of your potential consciousness before you even realize there are
kind of
boundaries.
deep. Okay.
Yeah. And combine language with cultural norms. These are usually taught before we develop strong critical thinking skills, say before age 7 or 8.
Right, when you're just soaking everything up like a sponge.
Exactly. So cultural behaviors, social roles, how you're supposed to react emotionally, these things get cemented as automatic habits before we can rationally step back and ask, wait, does this actually make sense? Is this true?
So we're basically trained in obedience first, truth-seeking second. Or maybe not at all.
Often, yeah. It cements this idea that external authority, parents, teachers, culture, holds the keys to what's real and what's right.
Okay, so we've got the home environment, the initial language programming, but the conditioning doesn't stop there, obviously. It just scales up massively when we hit layer 3, institutional conformity, specifically the school system.
Right. And this layer is maybe the most intellectually revealing in a way.
Hmm.
What's fascinating, according to the sources, is digging into the historical context. Where did modern compulsory education actually come from?
Okay, where?
Well, it was largely modeled on the 19th century Prussian system, and that system was designed with a very explicit goal.
Which wasn't necessarily well-rounded critical thinking.
Not primarily, no. The goal was to produce obedient, standardized workers for the burgeoning industrial factories and, frankly, for the military. It was about creating cogs for the machine, not necessarily original, questioning, self-directed individuals. The whole system was optimized for compliance.
And you can see that in how schools still operate, right? The moment you bring in standardized testing, grading curves, you inherently prioritize uniformity, fitting in over standing out.
Absolutely. The very mechanics of learning often reflect that original purpose. Students get rewarded, A grades, praise for memorization, for repeating the accepted answers, for conforming to the teacher's expectations in the curriculum.
You get ahead by playing the game, not by questioning the rules of the game.
Precisely. Deviance, whether it's intellectual curiosity that goes off script or behavioral noncompliance, tends to be penalized, or at least not encouraged. It's certainly not celebrated in most systems.
But what about the material itself, the curriculum? Surely that's objective, based on facts.
Well, the sources argue otherwise. They suggest that the curriculum itself is another massive layer of control. It's often shaped, subtly or overtly, by powerful corporate interests, by current political agendas, by, outdated institutional norms that just resist change.
Mm.
And this problem gets even worse in higher education, apparently. Universities, academic journals, they can get caught in this self-referential loop. It's called circular validation.
Meaning?
Teachers are taught by other teachers who were taught in the same system. They publish in journals reviewed by peers, maybe even their former classmates who share the same foundational assumptions. It can become an ideological bubble that just validates itself endlessly, often without serious external challenge from fundamentally different perspectives.
Okay, so we've moved from home, through school, now we're out in the wider world. We hit layer 4, gatekeepers of information. This sounds like the media, academia, the internet in general.
Exactly. This is like the continuous background hum of reinforcement for the matrix.
And what drives this layer?
This layer really highlights the profit and power motives behind how information flows. Think about mainstream media. It's almost always profit-driven, right? It
Yeah.
relies on advertisers, maybe has corporate owners, deals with political players.
True.
That financial structure inevitably shapes things. What stories get covered? How long do they stay in the news cycle? And crucially, how do they get framed? Often it favors conflict or sensationalism or just maintaining a kind of status quo that keeps the established order ticking along.
And it's not just a traditional media anymore, is it? The sources point to something maybe even more pervasive, digital bias.
Yeah, this is huge. And it's a kind of silent global conditioning mechanism. Think about search algorithms, Google, others, social media feeds. They actively promote certain content. Often it's the establishment views, the consensus answers, or maybe just commercially beneficial stuff.
So if the accepted answer is always pushed to the top, then genuinely challenging perspectives, minority viewpoints, even if they have solid data behind them, they become exponentially harder to find. You're guided, often without even realizing it, towards the prevailing narrative. The algorithm becomes the arbiter of truth.
Wow. And even fields we think of as purely objective, like science, they're not immune to this gatekeeping.
That's maybe the most sobering point in this layer, what the sources call the science trap. Think about it. Science depends fundamentally on trusting studies that almost no single individual has fully validated themselves.
What do you mean?
We live in an age of extreme hyperspecialization. A heart surgeon can't personally verify the quantum physics behind the imaging tech they use. The quantum physicist hasn't replicated the decades of drug trials for the medicine they might take.
Right, you have to trust the system. Exactly. We accept the conclusions because we trust the system of peer review, funding agencies, academic authority,
Yeah.
not because we've personally run every experiment or checked every data point. And that necessary reliance, that trust, creates a vulnerability. It makes the whole system susceptible to dogma, to funding bias, to groupthink, just like any other human institution.
Okay, this is where it gets really contemporary, maybe even a bit sci-fi. Layer 5, modern reinforcement driven by AI and social media. This feels like conditioning at a whole new scale.
It really is. We're seeing AI and algorithms now actively, constantly influencing not just what we see, but our speech patterns, our behavior patterns. 297 at a global scale.
And social media is singled out as particularly corrosive.
Yeah, because the sources argue it doesn't just show you what you already want. That's the old model. The new algorithms are designed to actively teach you what to want.
Teach you what to want.
By
How?
managing your aspirations, your desires, it does this based on maximizing engagement, keeping you scrolling, showing you ads,
Yeah.
ultimately maximizing profit for the platform.
So it's the constant comparison, the endless feed, the algorithm basically defining what success looks like, or beauty, or happiness.
Exactly. It provides this perpetually moving target, but it's tailored for algorithmic feedback loops, not for your genuine internal sense of fulfillment. It starts dictating the very structure of your desires.
And the sources say this goes even deeper than just managing what we consume or desire.
Yeah, this is the really profound insight here. AI isn't just shaping the content we engage with. It's starting to shape the very structure of thought itself.
The structure of thought, like how we think.
Kind of, yeah. It means we're increasingly outsourcing complex cognitive tasks, searching, synthesizing, even generating ideas to these programmed entities. And the Max Planck Institute finding that the source is sight, that's critical.
Remind me what that was.
That AI like ChatGPT is already altering human speech patterns.
Wow.
It suggests we might be moving towards, simplified syntax, maybe reduced complexity in our arguments, prioritizing consensus-driven ideas because those are the patterns the AI models learn from and reinforce.
So we risk letting the algorithm actually define the intellectual limits of our language, and therefore our thought.
That's the danger highlighted, yeah. It's a serious concern.
Okay, if those 5 layers weren't enough to paint the picture, layer 6 seems to wrap it all up. Systemic rigging. This sounds like ensuring total conformity across pretty much all aspects of life.
That's basically it. This is the societal enforcement mechanism. Just look around, the sources say. The way jobs are designed, the constant bombardment of advertising, the regulated choices we have in food or healthcare paradigms, the political narratives we're fed, dating norms, even how we choose our social circles.
They all push towards a certain kind of normalcy, conformity.
Exactly. They all promote conformity.
Mhm.
And the structure isn't necessarily accidental. It's presented as the necessary mechanism for the matrix, this system, to maintain stability and predictability. Everything's kind of designed to keep the machine running smoothly without too many glitches or deviations.
And what happens if you do deviate? If you start really questioning the fundamentals of, say, the school system, layer 3, or the media narrative, layer 4?
Well, the control mechanism is simple but highly effective. Social punishment.
Meaning?
You get ostracized, labeled difficult, a conspiracy theorist, negative, unrealistic. Maybe you're marginalized professionally, lose opportunities, or perhaps it's more personal isolation from friends or family who are still deeply embedded in the system.
That pressure keeps people in line.
It's a powerful external pressure cooker. And the final sort of crushing insight into how this matrix works is that it validates itself because, as we talked about right at the start,
Every institution supports the others.
exactly. This creates this cohesive, unified reality that from the inside looks total, objective, complete. It makes it incredibly difficult to even identify it as a construction rather than just reality itself.
Wow, okay. So we've diagnosed the illusion layer by layer. What does this actually mean for the average person? The one who just accepts these 6 layers of conditioning without really questioning them.
Well, when you synthesize all that programming, all those layers working together, you get a very concrete, probably immediately recognizable life trajectory. The sources call it the programmed life path.
Okay, so what does the typical output of this matrix system look like? What's the path?
Laying out this sequence really demonstrates the almost inevitability of conformity, unless the individual actively intervenes, unless you consciously decide to rewrite your own operating system.
It shows you where you're likely heading if you just stick to the default settings.
Precisely. So step one, it starts simply, tied right back to layers 1 and 2. You're born to already conditioned parents. You immediately inherit the software version they were running. You basically enter the matrix from day one.
Makes sense. Then step 2.
You're shaped by language, culture, and intense peer pressure. This installs those foundational habits, the emotional templates, the cultural boundaries we talked about, all before you have the rational tools to question them. It sets your behavioral defaults.
Got it. Then comes school. Step 3. You're educated into conformity. You learn obedience, compliance, standardization within that Prussian design system, the one that rewards rote memorization. That's layer 3 in action.
Right. Step 4. Then media and established digital platforms further imprint your worldview. They cement the biases you picked up in childhood and school. Your sources of information are filtered through those layer 4 gatekeepers, the algorithms, the editorial choices.
Okay, after education. Step 5. You join the standardized workforce for survival. You basically trade your time, maybe your unique creativity, for a prescribed form of financial stability within the existing system. You've learned the system's primary value exchange. Time for money, compliance for security.
Exactly.
Exactly.
You start to participate without reflection in the societal rituals. Things like consumerism, following trends, taking certain kinds of vacations, adopting prescribed political stances or lifestyle choices.
Things that reinforce group identity over individual thought.
Precisely. It satisfies layer 6, keeping you within the herd. Step 7. You find yourself constantly seeking external validation from the same biased sources. You look to media, maybe academia, social platforms, your boss, to tell you that your life path, your choices, your opinions are correct or good.
Creating that feedback loop that feeds right back into layers 4 and 5.
You got it. Which leads to step 8. If you do genuinely deviate, if you start questioning the really deep fundamental norms, you are often actively punished for questioning the matrix. This could be professional setbacks, social isolation. It reinforces the power of layer 6.
And finally, the loop closes with step 9.
You repeat the cycle with the next generation. Unconsciously, maybe with the best intentions, you become the distributor of the very inherited software you never actually chose for yourself.
Wow, that's the default operating system. Pre-installed, running on a loop, a life lived according to borrowed scripts.
That's the picture. The sources paint, yes.
Okay, the diagnosis is clear. It's pretty sobering. And the outcome of just letting that program run is now visible. But now we need to shift gears, right? From analysis to action.
Absolutely, because the sources don't just leave us there realizing we might be programmed. They provide a clear, practical path out. It focuses on 4 transformative steps.
Good. This is the crucial how-to section for the listener who hears all this and decides, okay, I want to be the author of my own life.
Let's get into it. Step 1, create your own matrix. Now that sounds paradoxical, right? Given everything we just said about escaping the matrix.
Yeah, why would you create your own matrix? Why not just, smash the system?
Because it addresses a fundamental psychological need. It's about mindset reframing. The mind, fundamentally, it abhors a vacuum. It craves order.
Okay.
So if you don't actively provide a powerful, self-generated, meaningful order for your mind to follow, it will inevitably, maybe unconsciously, just latch onto the default order, the one provided by the social matrix we just described.
So you can't just destroy the old system without replacing it with something better, something yours.
Exactly. You have to immediately replace it with a superior, purpose-driven one that you design.
So the goal here is setting internal priorities that are just stronger than all that external noise and pressure.
You nailed it. This is done by setting self-generated goals. Goals that are so powerful, so compelling to you, that the inevitable discomfort, the friction, the social side-eye, maybe even rejection that comes with stepping outside the matrix, all that stuff becomes irrelevant, or at least manageable.
Your why has to be stronger than their why not.
Perfectly put.
Yeah.
Your self-authored vision must outweigh the fear of ostracism, that layer 6 punishment mechanism.
Now, I found the tool the source material suggested for this really potent, the anti-vision tool. Can you unpack that a bit?
Yeah, the anti-vision.
Yeah.
It's powerful because it's visceral. It's a detailed, emotionally charged vision of the life you absolutely do not want.
So looking at that programmed path we just outlined.
Exactly. It forces you to confront the reality of step 9, that predictable, conformist, maybe deeply unfulfilling trajectory of the programmed life. You have to really reflect, where is my current path actually heading, if I make no changes.
And you have to let yourself feel the potential, disgust,
Okay.
shame, regret.
Yes. Feel the potential disgust, the emptiness, the regret of that default conforming life, that negative emotional anchor, that visceral rejection of the default future becomes incredibly potent fuel. It keeps you going when the path of breaking free inevitably gets difficult.
Okay, so you need that positive vision, the self-generated goal, and this negative anti-vision pushing you from behind.
It's a powerful combination. You need a destination that is fundamentally incompatible with the program path you realize you might be on.
Hmm?
Once that vision, positive and negative, is crystal clear, then we move to step 2. Pursue an interest-based education.
Okay, and this step sounds like a direct antidote to all that obedience and conformity we learned in layer 3, the school system.
It absolutely is. It's a direct critique of traditional schooling, which, as we discussed, often fails at true education, the kind that's about discovery, self-direction, solving real problems that matter to you.
Traditional schooling serves the institution's needs.
While self-education serves your needs, your goals, your life.
So we have to shift our identity, get away from being just a passive consumer of whatever curriculum is handed down by those potentially biased institutions. What's the new identity?
The sources say you need to learn as a curator, not just a consumer.
What's the difference? Curator versus consumer.
Okay, so a consumer might watch a YouTube tutorial on, say, coding and feel informed. Okay, I watch that. A curator experiments. They actively challenge the beliefs or methods presented. They test them against reality. They ask, does this actually work for me for my specific problem?
So it's learning for immediate application, not just information hoarding.
Exactly. If you're learning about investing, you don't just read books. You test a small hypothesis with a small amount of money. If you're learning about health, you don't just read articles. You maybe experiment with your diet for a week and track how you actually feel. Maybe to track some biomarkers.
That distinction feels really important. How do we make this practical for someone listening?
The source material is very direct here. Self-educate, based explicitly on your immediate interests and the actual problems currently blocking your path towards those self-generated goals you set in step 1.
Like health, money, relationships.
Whatever is relevant to you. And the recommendation is rigorous. Commit to studying, say, 30, 60 minutes every day on things directly tied to achieving those goals. This isn't passive learning. It's active, high-leverage curiosity that yields tangible results. It replaces the old habit.
Okay, step 3 feels like the linchpin, the thing that challenges layer 6's control mechanism head on. It's develop high agency. This sounds like the psychological breakthrough needed to actually walk that nonconformist path you're designing.
It absolutely is. Agency, as the sources define it, is simply the ability to act without permission.
Without permission.
Okay,
Right.
it's the direct opposite of waiting for societal approval or external validation, that trap we saw in step 7 of the program path. Low agency people, they wait. They wait for the perfect moment, the perfect skill set, the perfect funding, or for some authority figure, a boss, a parent, society, to tell them, okay, you're ready now, go ahead.
Right. They see a difficult goal, and their first thought is all the reasons they can't do it, often citing those inherited fears or perceived systemic blocks. The system won't let me.
Exactly. High agency people, conversely, see a difficult goal and almost immediately start breaking it down. Okay, what are the components? What skills do I need? What resources? How can I get them? They recognize that skills and resources can be acquired over time through effort.
I like the analogy the sources used. A low agency person sees a locked door and walks away because they don't have the key.
Right. A high agency person says, okay, it's locked. Let me find the blueprint for this door. What kind of lock is it? Can I learn to pick it? Can I build a ladder to go over it? Can I find another way around? They don't wait for the owner to magically appear and grant access. They figure it out.
So how do you build this agency muscle? The sources give some actionable advice, right? It's about creating a track record of self-directed action.
Yes. First, the advice is take small steps to learn and act immediately. Don't get stuck in analysis paralysis waiting for perfection or final approval. Just start. Second, regularly expose yourself to challenging problems. Get comfortable with discomfort. Minor failures along the way actually build competence and resilience. They counter that learned obedience reflex.
Makes sense. Learn by doing, even if it's messy.
And third, maybe the most radical advice. Actively question norms that make demonstrably different decisions, even small ones. You have to prove to yourself, through successful little acts of nonconformity, that the sky doesn't fall, that the consequences of challenging Layer 6's authority are often manageable, maybe even beneficial in the long run.
This distinction is vital, isn't it? It shifts the whole locus of control. High agency people build their own paths, create their own permissions. Low agency people are perpetually waiting for that external okay from the very biased sources they should probably be escaping.
Which brings us beautifully to the final step, step 4. Become a value creator. This feels like the culmination of the whole process. It's the natural output of your new, self-authored operating system. And it's fundamentally incompatible with the passive, consumption-driven life offered by the Matrix.
Why is creation, specifically value creation, so central to escaping the program?
Because, the sources argue, a clear purpose of being human is solving problems, improving our environment, helping each other. It's kind of what we naturally do.
Hmm.
The Matrix tries to channel that impulse into just consuming things or complying with existing structures.
Okay.
But when you focus on value creation, you're building things, tools, systems, ideas, art, whether they're physical or mental, things that improve your life directly and potentially contribute something tangible to others.
And this output, this act of creation, is linked to deeper fulfillment.
The argument is that it leads to both progress and purpose. You're making the world incrementally better, even in a tiny niche. And you're acting in alignment with those self-generated goals you set back in step 1. It reinforces the new order you're building for yourself.
So you're no longer just consuming the Matrix's prepackaged experiences.
You're actively contributing to shaping an external reality, one that you have a hand in defining.
And crucially, the sources point out that the internet is like the ultimate tool for this right now, a high leverage vehicle.
Absolutely critical point. The internet allows you to bypass so many of the traditional gatekeepers we talked about in layer 4.
Right. You don't need a publisher or a record label or a gallery owner in the same way.
Exactly. It lets you share your knowledge, solve niche problems for potentially a global audience, connect directly with other like-minded, maybe non-conforming individuals. You can essentially form your own independent ecosystem, largely outside the direct control of the old matrix structures.
You have the ability to create and distribute value globally without asking permission from almost anyone. That's high agency in action.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've laid out the diagnosis, the grim default trajectory, and now these 4 practical steps for escape. Let's take a moment now to maybe connect these actions back to some of the deeper psychological and philosophical ideas that seem to underpin this whole framework. Give our listener a bit more context.
Yeah, that's important. Because the how-to steps make more sense when you grasp the underlying why. The need for this kind of self-authorship, for becoming the conscious manager of your own mind. It's rooted really deeply in psychology. We have to go back to that idea of the unconscious mind dictating things.
Which brings us straight to Carl Jung's territory, right?
Exactly. The sources specifically pull out that key Jungian insight. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate.
Wow. Say that again?
Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate.
That perfectly explains why step 1, creating your own matrix, setting those conscious goals is so vital.
It really does. If you don't actively excavate and examine that inherited software, those subconscious fears and beliefs, that systemic programming, you'll inevitably just mistake its directives for your destiny. You'll think the limits imposed by the matrix are just the way things are, immutable reality.
And then there's that really challenging observation from the philosopher Jiddu Krishnamurti. He questioned the very nature of authentic thought itself. That feels like a powerful critique, especially relevant to layer 5, the AI and social media stuff.
Oh, Krishnamurti is potent here. He argued that most of what we call thinking is actually just mechanical repetition. His phrase was something like, you don't think your thoughts, you replay memories shaped by others.
Replaying memories shaped by others.
Yeah. So if our internal monologue is mostly just a loop of inherited social scripts, media sound bites, parental injunctions, how can we possibly achieve genuine authenticity? He even argued that often the very search for uniqueness becomes just a parroting of other people's call for authenticity.
So we end up performing individuality based on cues we picked up from the Matrix, rather than truly originating it. Like curating a personal brand based on social media trends.
Exactly. We confuse a well-curated performance, validated by external metrics like likes and shares, with true, internally generated individuality.
And that idea hits particularly hard when we bring AI back into it. If our thoughts are already largely echoes, and then we introduce AI systems that are trained on and tend to reinforce brevity and consensus,
We risk accelerating the erosion of complex, nuanced, truly independent thought. We have to keep reiterating that concept because it's so important. AI isn't just changing content, it's changing the way you think.
how we structure arguments, what we consider valid knowledge.
By outsourcing our curiosity, our synthesis, our cognitive heavy lifting to these large language models, we could inadvertently be solidifying the consensus reality spoon-fed by the matrix. We might be eliminating the very cognitive friction, the struggle with complex ideas, that's necessary for truly novel breakthrough thinking. Escaping the matrix demands resisting that total outsourcing.
But there's an empowering flip side here, isn't there? Tying back to step 3, high agency, and maybe the work of someone like Maxwell Maltz.
Absolutely. Maltz, famous for psychocybernetics, showed pretty convincingly that we operate according to our self-image, which is basically our internal mental operating system.
Right.
So if we can consciously choose our self-image, if we feed our mind with those self-authored goals from step 1, we fundamentally change the feedback loop. We change the actions we're capable of taking. That directly enables step 3, high agency.
And the final agency insight the sources offer ties it all together.
Yeah, you don't need permission to create. The internet is the highest agency tool. It's like saying, the hardware, your mind, is capable, and the most powerful vehicle ever created for independent action, the internet, is sitting right there. You just need to decide to install your own software and start driving.
We also shouldn't forget some of the underpinning psychological concepts that actually make implementing these 4 steps feel good or at least engaging, like the idea of flow state.
Right. That's where the positive reinforcement cycle kicks in. The kind of goal setting and self-directed learning we talked about in steps 1 and 2 align perfectly with the conditions for achieving flow.
That optimal state of being totally absorbed and engaged.
Exactly. Described beautifully by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi and explored further by people like Stephen Kotler. To get into flow, you generally need clear goals, immediate feedback, and crucially, a good balance between the challenge of the task and your current skill level.
And exiting the matrix provides exactly that framework.
It really does. You have incredibly challenging, meaningful goals, escaping conformity, building your own life, and through step 2, interest-based education, you're constantly developing the skills needed to meet those challenges. It sets up the perfect conditions for deep engagement and ultimately a more fulfilling experience than passive consumption.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize this whole deep dive. If we boil it all down, the core message seems to be we are likely operating within a multi-layered, self-reinforcing illusion.
Yeah. Society, through all these layers we discussed, teaches conformity, standardization, obedience, but it cleverly masks it as education, freedom, common sense, or even individuality.
And escaping this matrix isn't about finding some secret key or hidden map. It's about making 4 conscious, deliberate choices. Repeat them for us.
1. Taking full ownership of your goals and your internal mental order. 2. Learning for yourself, driven by curiosity and the need to solve your problems. 3. Acting without waiting for permission, developing high agency. And 4. Consistently creating value, contributing something back to the world based on your unique path.
Now, the sources are realistic. They acknowledge that not everyone will escape this programmed reality. The path is demanding.
It really is. It requires constant vigilance, persistent questioning, significant effort, and definitely the courage to potentially face social friction or ostracism.
But the good news is the path is defined. The source is laid out clearly, and it's ready, as they say, for those willing to walk it.
Mm-hmm. So maybe the final thought, the challenge we leave you, the listener, with is this. Given everything we've unpacked today, the parental scripts, the institutional conditioning, the algorithmic nudges, all of it, what is one single, deeply ingrained, inherited belief, just one, that you will choose to consciously question and maybe even actively try to disprove starting today.
Go author your operating system.